Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. Doing a requested build video. User Artie prevents camping 1645. Requested a Corinth Prime build, and I'm happy to do it. This is actually used to be one of my favorite weapons, especially when it came out. Um, and in the realm of like, say, on a scale of like F to A, with like weapons that are overpowered, like an S tier. This weapon would sit at probably like an A to like maybe an A minus. But the thing that actually makes this weapon really good is actually its Riven Dispo. And the Rivens are actually pretty cheap compared to, say, something that's like an extremely meta weapon, right? Currently, the weapon or the Riven Dispo is 3 dots, so it's middle of the road. But let's go ahead and fit our multipliers on here. There's two basic builds for this. We're going to talk about the primary fire. The second build is going to be for the secondary fire. The builds are not too different. So let's just go ahead and get our core modifiers. Alright, so we have base damage from the Arcane, Primary Merciless, Galvanized Savvy for the damage increase, and the status chance, which is going to become important. Multi-shot, crit damage, crit chance. With shotguns, there are additional things you kind of need to worry about. Shotguns have a lot of things that can hurt them, and a lot of in terms of like because they have the fall off mechanic, right, which is more or less the equivalent of follow through on melees, and is one of the things that can hurt them. But the benefit of shotguns is the fact that they tend to have quite a bit of multi-shot, and if you can get in the 100% before the fall off kicks in range, you can do a ton of damage. So let's get our core modifiers. We'll keep going. Okay, so we have basically two flex slots, and we're going to have to figure out which one of these we need to take off. We have base damage from the Arcane and Galvanized Savvy to push it even further. Multi-shot, crit damage, crit chance, Galvanized Acceleration to deal with the fall off, and fire rate. Now, if you were to just leave the build at this, it would be relatively okay, right? Because you have IPS. This weapon isn't one of those weapons that has an issue of like having like puncture slash toxin or something like that, or only being like a 2 stat, like only having puncture or slash. So you're gonna get plenty of RNG on it. Here you basically have to make a decision whether you're gonna go like pure corrosive, obviously dealing with hold on. Pardon, sorry. You could go for a pure corrosive build, and that would be very strong for, say, like Star Chart and the beginning of like Steel Path. Though you would eventually want another form of scaling. But this build, if you had just finished the Star Chart and you've been doing your arbitrations, and even for like a basic build, if you don't have Prime Ravage, use regular Ravage. If you don't have Prime Charge Shell, use regular Charge Shell. You know how it is by now. Just base damage, crit chance, crit damage, multi-shot, fire rate, and base damage are the core multipliers. Basically, you're just trying to turn as many of these numbers green as possible, right? Um, so we have a bit of conditionals that'll increase the damage of the weapon. And let's go ahead and shoot some stuff real quick. We'll keep the bomb, what were we doing? The exos. We'll keep our Gokstad officers, but we're going to lower them down to 100. So it takes a little bit to kill them, but we got stuff stacking up now. Now they're down to 2 shots. Viral helps a lot from the Panzer. Everything's a 2-shot. Got a 1-shot. Arcane stacked. Getting 30k, 45k, 4k per pellet. Alright, so 5k to 14k on the random orange. Probably have the vigilante set somewhere on the build. So the damage is okay for basic mission running. So let's start with like a steel path level build, if you will. Well, generally you're going to want, even though galvanized acceleration does deal with our fall off, the Corinth Prime actually has pretty decent fall off. Okay, so 23. This is the range that you would have with galvanized acceleration before any fall off starts to occur. So just in terms of, we can adjust our gameplay style, but it's not like a 6-meter range where we're dying for more range. Because like 6 meters would be like this. Like if our fall off started here, increasing the range on the weapon would be a significantly higher priority. But with galvanized acceleration, it's this. So the range isn't a big deal. So let's remove it. It's going to knock us down to 18. And let's see how far that gets us. So before we were here. Now 18 is this. That's still not too bad. You're not going to be a sniper, but you're not using a shotgun for sniping. And this is going to be the end of the fall off scaling, where you'll do the lowest amount of damage due to fall off. So not a big deal, but because the range is good enough as is, it's not really killing us not modding for it. So we can go for an additional form of scaling. If you're running the Panzer, you could do corrosive. I run corrosive on the Corinth. And let's go ahead and bump that guy back up. Yeah, make sure to get our 60-60 maxed out. Bumps the status projectile up. That only helps. We're still heavily corrosive weighted. We're taking advantage of the primed mods. The primed elementals. Which is because you want to be able to do as much damage as you can in a single shot. Right? Like with a shotgun, sort of the ultimate ideal is you only have to shoot something once or twice. You're not going for like a bullet hose aspect, because if you wanted a bullet hose, you would go with a rifle, because there's no fall off with that, where you're just going to burn them down with literally the weight of your bullets, not actually the damage. So let's see how that does. We've changed it out. It's obviously going to do more damage. Alright, so now we got slash with no weighting. Alright, 3,000, 26,000 on a headshot, 22,000 on a headshot, 23, got a 40, 44, 50 on an orange, something from the vigilante set kicked in. Body shots are 5,500 slash, 7,400 body, 22k slash. It's going up, but it's not breaking the game yet, if you will, right? Let's try a headshot. Okay, it's 1 shot. So we're only seeing 4 pellets. So even though the damage is like, say 10k to 50k on like a lucky vigilante proc, right? Where it gets, you get the addition, it crits and you get the additional tiers, so it goes to orange. We're still only seeing 4 pellets, right? So the full damage of the weapon isn't even showing yet, because the enemy isn't tanky enough. So our multi-shot is 12 at base, with just the base bonus of galvanized hell. it's not even showing the multi-shot increase yet because the enemies just aren't tanky enough. So the weapon on its own does way more damage. So let's go ahead and increase our levels since we're doing level 100. Let's do 190 exos and see if these guys last a little bit longer. There we see all the 12. Alright, we're seeing way more slash, obviously putting multiple hits into it. Alright, 20k on a headshot, 25k. Alright, let's just stack up the arcane. Alright, we're stacked up. Foot shot, 51k slash. With the same weapon where we were getting like 5k before. It's because more the hits are proccing. Alright, 3700. Alright, and it's dead. 14k. The orange crits are hitting for about 10. The second one, 9700. Yeah, the damage is jumping around a bit. But with a primary, it's really good to double tap because we're dealing with conditional mods and like gundition overload, if you will, whatever that term is that people use. Having a decent amount of attack speed to be able to double tap stuff with like the stronger units like the Eximus is just going to be like a good tactic where you still will have the power to one tap the weaker enemies. If like an Eximus comes over, you just shoot it twice and you're good to go. And still, this is core scalings. We do have Shotgun Barrage on, and just for transparency, Arcane Tempo is on the frame. And I think I swapped these out. Okay, and we have a primary status chance Tau Forged. So finally got my full set of the 5 Tau Forged on Nezha, so good times. But we're still going for raw damage. Right, so the damage isn't going to go up, but I'm going to get the status effects more quickly, right? So this is going to be the basic core build for like Steel Path. Pretty simple. Most of these mods are locked in. Like if you don't have Arcane Tempo, Shotgun Barrage is practically mandatory. Because the fire rate with critical deceleration is kind of low. Like 1.13. Like this is the fire rate with deceleration. If you're having to double tap stuff, you need Barrage on there. So most of these are like reasonably locked in. Like Galvanized Savvy's locked in. Galvanized Hell's locked in. Deceleration and Ravage, whichever one you have. If you have the primed, obviously use that. And to take advantage of the fact that it's a shotgun, I almost always mod my shotguns for a heavy elemental weighting. Because of the multi-shot, it allows you until like way higher levels to just ignore faction damage, basically. It feels stronger. It feels stronger early. Even though technically you would want to worry about like the weighting of IPS and maybe getting like 100 munitions procs. Generally, just one-shotting them just feels better. So until you run into like, if you're doing like an hour-long run or something, this is going to kind of be your go-to build. Okay, so let's talk about like additional scalings. This is like a generic Corinth that I have. It's only got 4 Forma in it. Let's talk about better scaling so you can see the difference in like a Rivened Corinth. This one is completely Forma'd. There's way more prime mods on it, and there's even a Riven. The Riven is status chance, toxin, crit damage with a minus to impact, but it's still got Merciless, it's still got Savvy, Hell, Ravage, Deceleration, and it's still a 100 munitions build. It's still corrosive, but I'm utilizing tempo off the frame to give me the fire rate. in order to fit and gain the additional multiplier of the faction damage. So even with this build, I haven't taken this to level cap, so I can't be like, oh, this is level cap certified, as much as that matters nowadays. But I've done like level 2000 enemies. So this still kills, but I was using the Panzer for the viral primer. So let's look at the difference in damage. Especially once the faction mod kicks in, the damage is way different. Where those normal slash procs would be like 5k, 20k, like a 50k, we should be able to get like 3/4 mils. So we're starting out about the same. Slash ticks are 13k, 12k, 17k. Alright, yellow crits are doing 55, 20. Let's get our arcane stacked up. Okay. Okay, it's dead. That one's dead too. Alright, the raw damage is like 14k per pellet. 13k per pellet, but this is honestly more of a dot build, to be honest. 41k. The slash ticks are way higher, though. Let me see if I can shoot it so they don't die instantly. Okay, no viral. So 35k. 20k. 22. 31. Let's try a headshot, see if I don't kill it. Okay, that's all dead. Okay, either way. It's just the damage. This weapon is honestly built. I know it was one-shotting stuff, but this weapon is built so it kills, and the big hit happens on the second hit. So in order to get the additional scaling and really take advantage of the faction damage, it's the second hit that's supposed to hurt, even though the initial damage went up. It's still got the modded scaling, taking advantage of the Riven to give us the additional crit damage. The crit multiplier is 8.3, so obviously Slash loves that. But this is the build for like higher level stuff without incorporating frame buffs. So the issue is going to be is that there's a bunch of other stuff that's available now. So let's talk about some of those. And okay, first let's talk about like increasing the slash damage. The first one initially is Old Faithful. You take Ash Prime, right? If you want to do something like this, just having Ash Prime shoot something with slash damage causes your slash to do more damage. It's his passive, the additional slash damage, and the additional slash ticks. If you really want to amp this more, use the augment smokescreen for the additional crit chance. Obviously, it's a good time. It's 150 scaled crit chance. It's not flat. Otherwise, it would be busted, but still would give us way better numbers. Let's load in some nerds. Yeah, we're just seeing more oranges now. Yeah, 100Ks, 127s. And if you want to amp it even further, our alpha damage might actually go down. Yeah, 619. There's a nice little 1 mil. Crit damage is helping us out a lot. And if you wanted to do something like that for, say, like a level cap run, you would mod viral instead of corrosive, obviously, to do even more damage. Because even hitting that guy for 1 mil, that is 1 pellet. That's not the full 12, it's 1 pellet. You would swap out, obviously this build is very expensive to maintain. I recently took this off viral because I wanted to be able to use it in a more comfortable fashion. But the full scaling would be full strip, prime the enemy, and you would just shoot them in the head, obviously, and you would deal literally millions of damage, especially with the primed element. Um, Prime crit damage. I don't know what your Riven is, but if you don't have this, you would use a Toxin mod. So, and the faction damage is almost required nowadays. Not as much as it used to be, but now that the galvanized mods um, are like so powerful, faction damage isn't mandatory. It's obviously incredibly helpful, but it's not mandatory. So this is kind of the build for the primary fire. It's the one I use. The Corinth Prime is a really good time. I occasionally pick this up and still run with it. It's super comfortable to use. And obviously Ash doesn't have any um, shards on him yet. So that's basically it for the primary fire. It's very basic. Base damage, multi-shot, crit chance, crit damage. Um, Pick an element, put it on there, and fire rate. It's the same build as always, right? Now let's talk about the secondary fire. You're basically going to be taking the build off of the Brahma and applying it. You're basically going to be taking a build kind of like this one and applying it. Merciless needs to be here. There we go. And you're going to pick what your scaling is. And then you're going to invest in that scaling. So where you have base damage over here, we're not going to worry about galvanized aptitude. But you're going to pick your element. We're going to do an AoE, fire rate, multi-shot, crit chance, crit damage. The same thing as always, right? So it's that build, the build that you have on your Brahma, that gets put on the Corinth. So we'll go ahead and remove all of this. Merciless is there. Let's get our base multipliers. And we don't have Firestorm. Yep. So multi-shot crit. Critical deceleration. Ravage. Put those down there. So what do we mod? Right? Because the alt fire has a decent fire rate to it, honestly, you can obviously invest in speeding this up. To be honest, I don't. But the correct build would be fire rate. I would suggest something like a Vigilante Fervor. It feels zippy enough. Because you're spamming an AoE, right? The bigger issue in my mind in terms of like priority modding is it feels better personally to run tempo. Not because it's a bigger bonus to fire rate, which it is, but because reload becomes significantly more important on this build because you're spamming the alt fire so much. I run this on here to be able to slow down or to speed up the reload as fast as possible, because where with a primary fire you have access to your full magazine, like each shot counts once. When you do the alt fire, it's 4 shots each time. And make sure you're landing the alt fire, because there is an alt fire with it, right? We can see it here. You shoot once. It's just a little pellet. But if you alt fire, nice little AoE. Right? So you want to be using the alt fire. But the issue is that even though you have a 20-shot magazine, If you're using the alt fire, you've got 5. So the reload becomes the bigger issue, and I run tempo because the crit chance is going to be high enough. You still should, even though it's 12, right? You basically have 2 build paths with this. Run tempo and RNG the crit chance, or build for status that hurts and throw as much status chance on it as possible. Personally, I like forcing with like the Avenger build, either running Avenger, like Combat Discipline Avenger to get this crit chance up and running it crit anyway, or just running raw damage. Because if your weapon has like a 12% crit chance, you're not gonna have access to like using hunter munitions, right? And the AoE doesn't even have, it's blast only with impact. So most of the time people will use the alt fire as like a primer, if you will. Even though you kind of don't need this style anymore, and it's, I'll just be real, it's an older style where you use the weapon alt fire to prime. Like I think the Phantasma has it, right, where you shoot the ball out and it can dump a bunch of status onto one thing. But now because of the galvanized mods, it's way faster to just RNG the procs or the damage that you need onto the weapon to just kill it with the primary fire and let like a Sentinel or like the Panzer just viral stack it, right? But either way, so crit is not required on the alt fire build. Like look at how low, like 4%. The crit chance though does feel pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. So it's a low crit chance, but the difference is that because you're supposed to be hitting a bunch of enemies at once, you can probably RNG the crit chance. But the correct build is to dump as many elemental mods into it as possible. Let's do this. So we have range. Faction damage does help, but only in increasing like the initial damage. But because of that, things like going corrosive heat ends up feeling better, especially at lower levels. Because look at the AoE. You're trying to kill with the AoE. So 57,000 damage on an AoE is freaking phenomenal. If only it had crit chance. But that being said, if you're like a Harrow enjoyer or something like that, like you're blowing shit up anyway, you're going to be doing like 100,000 damage easy with this. So the issue is, where do you want to go with this, honestly? I like the reload build. You just build it for raw damage. And if you want something like this and whatever polarity you have, you can do viral. There's nothing wrong with viral. And with the build that I have, it's probably more efficient. This build would work great with enemies that you're full stripping. And let me show you that. That goes here. There we go. Okay. So we're not worried about damage too much. We just need as much raw damage as possible to make the initial hit as like hard as possible. So this would be like a no crit build, a bunch of base damage. We're not trying to apply statuses, we're trying to one tap. So these are 190s. We're not using crit. About 20k, 50k, 200k. You saw the RNG crit. Yeah, 364 on a raw damage hit. But this is going to be more for the frames that have like AoE armor strip. Like say Hildren, for example. could use something like that. But I personally find the alt fire a bit annoying. So it basically comes down to personal preference, what you want to do. Um, but if you're doing the alt fire build, it's base damage, base damage, base damage. Unless you can use something like a combat discipline Avenger setup, or your Harrow, where you can force crit chance onto it. Like if you can do like a Harrow with a combat discipline build and you actually enjoy that and you're able to full strip, or you're regularly dealing with a group that has a full strip accessible, like say like you're playing with like a Hildren or like a Necros or something like that, or you've Helminthed on Terrify and you want to force the alt fire build, um, you can do quite a bit with it. But it's just I find the primary fire more than sufficient. The only multiplier I think the main shot is honestly missing is I feel like it would have been a little bit better if it had like a little bit of punch through on it. I mean, even the Kuvakoma is punch through, right? Um, so you're kind of missing that, so it's going to hurt you when shooting through like groups of enemies. You're going to have to pop them one at a time. So it's just it is what it is. Um, but something like this, and then you got the flex slot because we're not modding for crit, even though you could. You have lots of freed up space. Let me show you the alt fire with the crit. All right, so 12% and a 3.4, and we'll do a full strip again. All right, everything's full stripped. Yeah, you can see when it hits pretty hard. It does RNG when the crit chance hit. It does do more damage on the crit, but still because the crit is so low, I wouldn't recommend unless you can force the crit on um making that attempt. And if you do want to do crit, you like seeing big numbers, you can hit millions. Um you could do like an Eclipse with like an Adarza Kavat on a combat discipline Avenger build. You're going to sacrifice a ton of stuff to do it, but if you want to run around and just nuke the piss out of stuff, that would be the way to go. Um, I wouldn't try to do the dots too much, even though the dots can do a ton of damage. Um, because you can't get slash onto it, you're kind of stuck with either doing heat, so like a viral heat build, where you would do like 60/60s for the viral and a monster heat, or do like a corrosive, which would be like two 60/60s for corrosive and a monster heat also, or do like a magnetic. Honestly, if you're doing magnetic, you've got access to 2 prime mods. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. You could probably one shot a ton of stuff, right? Let's take a look at what that damage is. There we go. Okay, so the damage is going to be about 52. We are massively weighted magnetic. Let's shoot some Corpus, see how that does. Just in terms of raw damage. Alright, we got Overguard, bunch of Eximus, and we have... I saw a Guardian. Let's see where he's at. Was there a Guardian? Okay, yeah, he's in the back corner. Alright, so our damage will probably be higher over here. Yeah, about 10k. Guardian Aura is killing us. Where are you? There we go. Alright, let's see what our damage is now. 30k. Our damage will jump once the Overguard's down. Yeah, about 26k. 40k. Random 130. Alright, we're stacked up. 49k. 24k. Yeah, 338k. Finally got a hit on the Overguard. And one was that 66k on health pool. So again, you wouldn't really care about trying to do a dot on that. If you did, you would go Toxin. But then you would lose some of the bonus of having the monster magnetic, right? Because you're going for like a one shot. Obviously, this would fall off at higher levels, so food for thought. I hope this explains some of the logic. This build is just, it's the Brahma build, but you build it without crit on the secondary because the crit's so low. Unless you want to force the crit onto it. The crit multiplier is pretty low, but it's definitely usable. It's 1.6. But it's got a monstrous base damage, though. You could probably get some pretty nasty numbers on. But you would have to worry more about stripping the defenses to really gain access to that higher raw damage to really make it worthwhile. Like you saw with the viral and the with the Grenier. So the damage definitely goes way up, but the primary fire is strong enough. I couldn't really recommend doing an all-fire build. Just because the primary is so strong. Like, the weapon's wonderful, and it's got a 3-dot disposition right now. So, I hope this helps. Let me go back to the recommended build. Something like this. If you don't have a Riven, I put Toxin here. But this is basically the build, and tempo on the frame is the final recommended one for, like, casually running through. If you don't want to mess around with faction damage, I like swapping these out. If you don't want to mess around with this and you just want something even more generic, acceleration is fine. If you want more damage, prime point blank, it's completely to whatever you want. Obviously, it's about you enjoying the game. And to be honest, Steel Path enemies with the Arcanes and the Galvanized mods, none of them are really that strong. So it kind of is what it is, right? So something like this, if you don't have any of the Prime mods, you go for the generic one. Like, instead of Prime Point Blank, you go to Point Blank, regular Ravage, regular Charged Shell, and I would say like a Toxin 60-60, just to make sure that that second shot hits as hard as possible. And if you're fine with using the Arcane, and you don't have tempo for the frame, Shotgun Barrage is basically a locked in. So, Galvanized Savvy, Hell, Ravage, Deceleration, and Shotgun Barrage are basically all locked in. So you don't have that much flexibility in the frame, or in the build, right? Because you need 6 of the mods. 5 of the mods. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 mods, 6 mods with the Ammo Mutation, and Merciless. You can obviously do a headshot build, which would technically be more damage. If you're trying to, like, min-max do a level cap run with it, you would skip Hunter Munitions entirely. The Faction mod would go here, and Deadshot would go here. Or, not Deadshot, Deadhead. And you would slot Faction here, and you would go viral. If you're trying to do something like that, it should get you up to like 2 to 3 million damage. But that's because there's so many multipliers, it forces the damage that high. So this isn't like, this build isn't something unique to like the Corinth. Like if you are running Deadhead, Savvy, Hell, crit damage, crit chance, and are running a viral setup, you're going to do damage. So this build just kind of, that style of building just applies to everything. And it's just how you comfortably get to higher level stuff. It's a play style adjustment. Some multipliers to think about. Roar for the slash build. Eclipse for raw damage. The basics, right? If you want to do like a grouping build, I would honestly say start prioritizing like punch through. So if you have tempo and you want to run a frame that groups, the punch through would massively increase your kill rate and help out a ton. Also, the reload would help keep your fire rate up. The total amount of time that you're dealing damage and not having to reload, because basically, like, your build can do millions of damage, but for every weapon in the game that reloads, you're not doing any damage when you reload. So the reload on the Corinth is a little long. And I would recommend, for if you're running Merciless, to not go into, what is it, the Prime Tactical Pump? Yeah, this one. If you're running Merciless, Seeking Fury, 2 seconds feels pretty good. It's obviously not a 1-to-1 reduction, but this still feels clean enough. Yeah, it doesn't feel too bad. Obviously, faster is better, right? But this feels fine enough to leave it as is without having to resort to a Prime Tactical Pump and not getting any other benefit. Because the punch through is another damage multiplier for shotguns. Because a lot of them don't have punch through. The ones that you want to have punch through don't have it. But then you have stuff like the Kuvacombe, which is like one of the top tier shotguns. Like, it's hard to beat that. But anyway, this is a long enough build video. Showed a couple builds. Base damage on the alt fire, though I don't recommend it, but you saw how to build, how to get a couple 100k out of it. I think the viral build against the Grenier was getting like 450, 300k, 450k. The multi-shot on the alt fire was boosting our damage up. And it's just, it is what it is. So I hope it helps. Have a blessed day, y'all. Take it easy. Artie prevents camping. I tried to talk way more than just like a normal build video. I hope this helped. But anyway, take it easy, guys. Y'all have a wonderful day. Stay blessed.